So what does companies like Facebook, Amazon, and Google have in common? Well, not only did they all start during a recession time, but they also started from a living room or a garage. Our next featured entrepreneur, Bertus Albertse, started his 80 million rand fitness company in his own living room. Hear about all the trials, tribulations, the tough times, the problematic times, but also the good times. How this entrepreneur built something from virtually nothing over the course of 7 years. If you're a struggling business owner or an entrepreneur looking for a franchise opportunity, we capture everything in this podcast. Enjoy and remember to subscribe and like all the pages. Not because I'm gaining anything out of it, but you will be missing out on future content if you don't do so. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I'm excited. Let's go. Bertus Albertse, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I followed your journey for the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years. And I have to say I'm inspired by your journey, not only as a business owner, but what you've accomplished in such a short time is just absolutely amazing. And thanks for sharing that with us today. I'm sure most people know what Body 20 is and how it works. But for those of the listeners that don't know, just in a brief explanation, what do you guys do? What is different from conventional training, etc.?
Oh, fantastic. Well, Body 20 Global is essentially a boutique fitness franchise. And the big difference is that we use technology to save people a hell of a lot of time when it comes to training specifically. So we use electromuscle stimulation technology in these wireless suits that you train in. And it helps us essentially get the right amount of muscle tension and the right amount of time under tension in the muscles to save people a huge amount of time. And in 20 minutes, and that's where the name comes from, Body 20. In 20 minutes, we give you anything between 4 and 6 hours worth of training, depending on your experience and capacity. But outside of that, we also offer health and wellness experts online to all of our members. We do assessments using InBody to make sure we keep ourselves accountable to tracking the client's results. And but ultimately, we are a network of franchisees, so owner-operated businesses, small businesses. That's the heart and the love and the passion of each owner goes into those studios. And we've got a very big network of over 200 personal trainers full-time employed by us and our studios. And it's everything about customer experience management. Everyone that walks into our studios, I always remind the team that we're not in the business of training people. We're in the business of making people feel good, because when they enjoy it, when they feel good, when they're inspired, then they come back. And when they come back, they see results. So ultimately, we're really in a fortunate position to make a positive impact in people's lives.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. So to be honest, I can also show you here that I'm also actually a member of Body 20. So I trained there as well for the last 6 or 7 months. But to be honest, from my side, I bought into the whole thing because of you. I'm very into entrepreneurs. I read a lot of books and watch a lot of videos based on entrepreneurs. And I actually originally bought into the whole idea. As I said, I followed your journey. So if you don't mind, let's tap into that and form a little bit of a timeline for all the business owners or potential business owners watching this video. So if I can jump you back to the start, before this thing was a reality, before there were any banners put up, and when you still had the idea in your head. So how did you, that's not the start. What year was that? And how did you take this idea and realize it into something?
Well, thank you for, first of all, it's so great to hear that you're a member of ours and that you're getting the great experience that we offer. My journey started actually off the back of many, many failures. In actual fact, it started very shortly after my last failure, if I can put it that way, where I had to close up my business. I had to move. And then when I, moved into a different area, a different house, it kind of opened my mind to saying, okay, well, what is out there, what is available. And I actually went to an expo where people were doing demos on the technology. It's a German manufacturer specifically. And, I was blown away with the training experience that the technology could offer. But I immediately saw, and this is back in 2013, so going on 7 years now, I saw the potential of how the technology can influence people that's not capable of training themselves, that's not motivated. And I mean, that's the vast majority of people, let's be honest. Unlike myself, who comes from the fitness industry, I used to be a competitive bodybuilder as a junior, physique and fitness athlete, etc. So I know what hard work goes into looking good, aesthetically at least, and both from a training perspective and the level of intensity and sacrifices you need to make. And I suddenly realized it was like a light bulb moment. As I was doing the demo on the technology, I realized, wow, this is the future of fitness. Honestly, where else can you guarantee the quality of the workout, irrespective of your training experience or how long it's been since you've trained? And that was a real light bulb moment for me. I actually, one of my friends that was with me at the expo, it was a fitness expo, said to me, Bert, listen, let's go in 50-50. I know you can do this thing successfully. I want to just train for free and you can pay me back. So to be honest with you, I still tell my franchisees, I didn't even have enough money to buy a full device. And I mean, to give you perspective, those devices aren't cheap. So they cost you maybe about 200,000 per unit with all the suits, etc. But our studios obviously cost quite a bit more than that, obviously from an investment standpoint, from a cash flow, build out, yes, branding, all of the other elements that go into it. And, even back then, I would not be the typical owner that could afford my business today.
But what you did have, I suppose, is this idea in your head, and you have the passion and the drive. And one would say probably you were a bit over optimistic at the time, as we all were or are as business owners. When you start something, it's kind of exciting and you just want to build this thing. And then I think it transpires into now it's where you as Bertus, now you start the business. And so explain that process to me, because you're hyped up with all this. You've got this thing in your head.
I buy this device with a loan actually from a friend. I literally had no plan. Okay, I took it home.
Okay.
I literally
love
took
the
it
honesty
home.
There. No plan.
No. Honestly, my plan was to share this revolutionary idea with people that I know and love and trust. Okay,
yes.
So it was literally training people. I used to have a bike that I used to pull in and out of my braai room. Okay, so I had a barbecue room, like most South Africans do, and I used to park my bike there. And it's the only place where I could train people if I train people. So I invited friends. I didn't charge anything for it. I didn't know what to charge, because keep in mind, the device is just a tool. And I think for a lot of business owners out there, when you get excited about something, always know that the excitement, that product or the thing you're getting excited about will be a tool on your journey. It is ultimately not the thing that will make you successful. Okay.
Absolutely.
Fortunately, I recognized that early on. I realized, okay, the value is not in the device. No one's going to buy a 200,000 Rand device just to train themselves. Okay. So the value is.
So you can't be a distributor. You have to use this and build a business.
Well, there are distributors. I would argue distribution business is a tough business, because you start from zero every month and you're chasing your tail all the time. So I didn't want to get into distribution of equipment, especially expensive equipment. That was not my interests.
Okay.
My interest was in the application. In the application, in the experience. I believe that I have a unique approach to how to apply the technology, and not necessarily being the manufacturing. So I don't need to be bogged down with creating the tool. The tool exists. There's no one that's got a patent on EMS. EMS has been around for 250 years. It's been refined to a full body application, which we offer as Body 20. But that's not where the unique aspect lies. So what happened, I started training people to get the feedback on how do they experience this, what they're willing to pay. And actually one of my clients, one of my friends said to me, Bert, this is awesome. I believe in this. I believe in you. There's an office down the road, my office. It's currently empty. No one's renting it. Why don't you go check it out? And that was like the Friday. And literally I moved in on that Sunday, and it's just an office. It literally had a boardroom. It had one office room, which I turned into a dressing area. And it already had a reception area. No branding, no nothing. I literally moved the device in there, moved the tables out of the place, out of the boardroom. And on that Monday, I started training people, and this, maybe to relate this back to other people, you got to start with what you have where you are.
Absolutely.
I know from the outside, it looks like this tremendous big plan and very smart people behind the scenes. No, we're all very, insecure. We all are, very inexperienced, at least until you've had some success in your life. And the way to overcome that is as you take action, the clarity comes. The plan develops. Not from planning, it's kind of analysis, paralysis by analysis. A lot of people, unfortunately, fall into that.
And then I suppose some variables comes in, and then you hit a speed bump, problems arise, and now suddenly you are looking at your business from this side with all this optimism and positivity, and now there's a problem. Now you have to look at it from a problem perspective and either solve this problem. And I think this is where a lot of people, lose their minds and lose their businesses, is when problems start to arise. Then you have to kind of make that conscious decision of, am I moving forward or backwards type of thing. So tell me about, now you moved from what I've read, your lounge, into this new office space. And tell me about, before we get to the franchise side of things, what's kind of the first speed bump that you hit as a business owner, where you thought, yes, I'm not sure if this can actually work. I mean, because you're a disruptor at the end of the day. We all know the big gyms, the big name gyms, and you came from the side, out of nowhere type of thing.
And everyone was telling me, why would I sign up to your business when all the gyms can just add this tool that's widely available?
Exactly. So I thought about that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the type of obstacles that you need to overcome, because people, but you know what? There's not one answer for it, Magnus. There's really not. And I didn't really prepare for this discussion because I want to be honest with you and your audience, and I think that that's important. It's important to be honest, because it might help someone in the position that they are today. I didn't have the answers. I never doubted. I don't know why, but sometimes you go through what we call domkrach. You've got like stupid power.
Yeah.
If you had to put it on a business plan, it would make little sense, So that's why a lot of people start even without a business plan, because it's such a developmental stage that if you overthink it, you'd probably never do it.
Absolutely.
So I did what was necessary. I trained people. That's my business. My business, if you're in services, if you're in selling a product, go do the service yourself. Go sell the product yourself. That is where the magic will happen. That's where you will learn the distinction between what's going to make you successful, what's going to be your USP. You can't develop those distinctions without being in the game. It's like trying to learn how to be a professional rugby player by standing next to the lines. No, it starts by playing ball with your friends. The same way business. Do business with your friends. Sell something to them. Give them a service. Even if it's free, start there, okay? Because they will give you distinctions that's going to help you distinguish yourself or differentiate yourself between other people.
Absolutely. So you were basically head down and you were driving this business, believing in it, and not listening to the naysayers. You were like, this thing is going to work, come hell or high water. And that was your journey.
I took the attitude, anyone that's saying nay, let me try and learn something and understand why, but let me ignore them, essentially. Yes. Otherwise, and let me try and take every positive point and develop that. And of course, you've got to develop those weaknesses as well. But getting back to 2013, I did this from my home. I moved to the office. That studio still exists today here in Brackenfell, in the northern suburbs of the Western Cape. But from there, 2014, I franchised the business. And since then, we're a global brand. We've got more than 50 locations in Southern Africa, 3 in Namibia, 1 in Botswana. We've expanded to the USA back in 2017. And since then, I've actually exited as the master franchisee in that business. And then, of course, Australia and which is a new territory for us, and now Benelux to be developed in the Netherlands and Belgium. We're busy with the expansion plan there. So, the key thing for me is once I established what is my passion in the business, which was really about customer experience. I wanted people to feel like they could never train as hard as they do unless they come to Body 20. Okay, so that was the key differentiate, is that you would train us harder than you could ever train by yourself, no matter what your age is. Okay, and that doesn't mean it's going to be uncomfortable. Sure, you want to push people harder than what they're comfortable, but that's kind of the vision and the mission behind what we do, is that we want you to feel like what you get from us is something you couldn't achieve by yourself. Okay, so that's something that always drove me, because people used to give me that feedback, and that's the great thing about being on the ground. I opened my doors 5 a.m. in the morning. I came home at 9 p.m. in the evening, and that was 6 days a week, and I did it all myself. I actually only employed a trainer like 6-9 months down the road when I was completely overwhelmed, exhausted from working day in and day out. But I did the hard yards to ultimately learn, what is the thing that distinguishes
the tricks of the trade, as they say. If I can back you up, so why franchising? I mean, a lot could reckon if you raised money from, let's say, investors and so forth, that you can own all the Body 20 franchises. And then secondly, if you can just tap into, and I think this is something great that you just mentioned, you needed to employ staff now and new trainers, etc. So now suddenly you move from kind of a sole proprietor, somebody working in your business. Now you're transitioning towards working on your business. So if you can just kind of tap into that, how did you do that? Because I think a lot of people, most people I meet, to be honest, that's exactly what they struggle with. They kind of micromanage everything, and they struggle to just build a business and work on the business. They have to be in it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess you've got to define what it does mean to work on the business. I think what for me, it was it was people that I was, to be honest with you, it's always comes down to people. It's never about how, it's about who. Okay, so
Okay.
I do believe in destiny, and certain people crossed my path at the right time and asked hard questions, and I was willing to do introspection, to have the humility to improve and understand where my weaknesses are. And that really pulled me on top. It literally had to pull me out of my business on top. The problems became too big. I couldn't bill my client. I couldn't recover the monies owed to me. I had to employ a full-time person for admin. So suddenly I realized, oh my word, collecting 200 members, membership fees every month is not sustainable. I'm going to have to develop a centralized billing model where it's being debited. So, those things comes from the pain that you experience. From the pain is how you develop those solutions. Without the pain, you're not going to, how would you know where the problem is, and that's ultimately what I was doing constantly. I identified the pain points, identify the weaknesses, and constantly work on it for constant, improvement on it. And eventually you find yourself working on top of the business, not by kind of a one day it happened, but over time, you start focusing on the things that really make a difference. People speak about the power rule, right? 20-80, meaning 20% of what you do delivers 80. It's more like 298, in my opinion, which is like 2% of what you do will ultimately generate 98% of your results. And that's true. It honestly is true. The franchising concept, in my business, it is a service business. So because I worked in the business, I quickly realized, there's no replacement for owner's heart in a business. There's no replacement for extreme ownership.
I absolutely agree with you.
So that's why franchising is such an interesting model, because you're allowing other business owners or potential business owners to license your business and your concept, but they take extreme ownership, something that you can not do yourself. You cannot duplicate yourself. And even if you did through management or regional managers and you develop a corporate model, which you pointed out earlier as another possibility to go instead of franchising, and maybe you do seed funding through equity finance or whatever the case might be. But the one thing you cannot finance and the one thing you cannot scale is extreme ownership. You can build a culture of extreme ownership within your staff, but that would mean that you probably need to have some contact with those people in order to have that leadership culture. In our business, because we're trying to expand our reach and we're in the service business, the contact is little. We're never going to see all the members. We're never going to engage with all the trainers all the time. But if you have an owner that cares and loves for that business like their own child, that is something that no amount of money can solve. And we've seen that because we do own a few studios, corporate studios, and they always underperform, about 20 to 30% lower performance than what a franchise
owner is not there.
There's no extreme ownership. And that being said, we've got strong managers and we've got strong operating procedures, strong processes, strong systems. But all of that means little unless your heart is in the business.
Would you say, Bertus, exactly. And Bertus, would you say in this specific phase that your biggest challenges were building that infrastructure, building all those type of set principles, starting with franchises, getting people involved? Now it's a sensitive case because people bet their pension on you. They use their spaarvarkie in order to open up a Body 20 franchise. So was that your biggest challenge throughout this phase? Let's say before you went global?
Yeah, for sure. It's the answer is yes. Of course, developing systems is something that you don't have up front. You do it as the need arises, and hopefully you've got the vision to anticipate certain problems. Unless you start implementing systems now, but no, that's definitely not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is really making other people believe in the vision and allowing them to see what you see. And that's really about almost prophesying or announcing your bigger vision and getting people convinced that there's a future for this when no one else sees it. When everyone else sees, well, why wouldn't Virgin Active or Planet Fitness just roll this out if it is, going to be popular, if it's going to be the future of fitness? And
Absolutely.
For people to look beyond those problems, that's your biggest challenge as an owner, to convince people. And that's the problem. A lot of owners aren't convinced themselves in their own concept, in their own business. Guess what? Stop doing it then. If you're not convinced that you are the leader in your market, that no one else can do it as well as you can do it, then you should probably not be doing it, because then you're wasting your time. You're going to go find something where you believe you're going to be better than everyone else. And to be honest, that's part ego, I suppose, in terms of believing even when it's not true. But it is also part important for your endurance, for your persistence, which is required, right? If I wasn't young and dumb, and believing in myself when I shouldn't have, in retrospect, because I've made so many mistakes, I got so many bloody noses through the process, then I wouldn't have had the guts to persevere. So the hardest thing I would say is the systems will come. Those problems are easy problems to solve. The harder problem to solve is getting buy-in from your team, buy-in from your customer, and making sure you're focusing on that and the growth of your business, your top line of your business, instead of worrying about your bottom line or your expenses or your systems or what you don't have. You've got to be someone that's really, really grateful for the things you do have, because if you're going to constantly be focused on things you don't have, I promise you it's going to demotivate you quicker than you can believe.
But clearly, you as a strong leader, you managed to actually do that for your franchisees to make them believe in the bigger picture, and I think that's super important if you are a leader, especially of a whole franchise group. But one thing I can take from your journey here is definitely that. Obviously, when you start a new business, you don't know what's coming. We don't always have the answers. We don't, as you say, we don't have the processes. We still have to build the process. But it doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't do it or you should stop or not go into it. I mean, learn it as you go along. That's what I've been doing my entire life. I didn't know how to do all these things that I'm doing now. But the point is, you start, you fail, and eventually you overcome at the end of the day. But okay, moving on the timeline. So now you guys, as you mentioned, you went global, you went into the US, you're in Australia, etc. Is the grass always greener on the other side? Because I know for a fact opening a business in the US is not as easy as it is in South Africa. I think we tend to think everything is always bad on this side, but I think there's a lot of struggles opening a business in the US, or is it just me?
Yeah, for sure. I think to start with, South Africa is really a very easy environment to do business. There's not so much red tape. I mean, it's quick. I mean, you can do it within 24 hours. It costs you less than $200 to register a company. These days, that's been made very smooth, and obviously labor is cheap here. So, there's a lot of benefits to doing business in South Africa. But I think it's easy to overthink it. Okay, if you look at my US expansion, perhaps we should speak about that for a moment. How did that happen? Back in 2015, someone asked me, said, Bert, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? And I said, what does that mean? I don't even know what it means. And he said, is that one thing that if someone said in your business, what's the ultimate goal that you're too scared to tell other people because it will sound ridiculous? Yeah. And it was the first time someone asked me that. I said, if you're really asking me, I'd say then a ridiculous number would be like 10,000 locations worldwide. Okay. Well, first of all, I said 10,000 locations. And, interestingly, he said to me, so how do you think you can do that? Let's imagine that for a moment. How does that look? And the immediate thing I said in response, and that really shifted and pivoted me immediately, is I said, well, first of all, I'm going to have to replicate what I do. So, for example, there can't just be one training academy. There can't just be one head office that's going to support 10,000 locations one day. Okay. That's an extreme number. I also had to immediately except that I wouldn't probably do over 100 in South Africa for that matter. So it's definitely going to have to happen globally if I'm going to have that level of vision. But what's interesting about that one single powerful question made me think about things that, as you mentioned earlier, that makes you zoom out for a moment, look at it from a broader picture. And immediately I went back home, and I think that speaks a bit to my habits, is I'm kind of obsessive compulsive. So I had to map it out for me. I had to write. What I typically do is I build a communication letter to myself. So I write myself a letter. So what I did is I went home, I wrote myself a letter on one page. It started out by saying, how do you get to 1,000 locations? I know I said 10,000 was my big, hairy, audacious goal, but that's a big one. Let's focus on 1,000. I said, okay, well, I'm going to have to sell what I do. I can't just sell my product, which is a franchise. I'm going to have to sell a master franchise, first of all. So to replicate my effort, there will be needed people like myself who can recruit people and franchisees into the brand, grow the network, support the network, train the franchisees in different regions. So I developed a strategy, essentially. We said, okay, well, what are we talking about? We're talking about a global support center, okay, and training center in each region. Okay, cool. What would this training center need? Oh, cool. It needs a master trainer. It needs probably accounts manager because we offer centralized billing. It probably needs a field agent or franchise relationship manager. So you see what I'm saying? Suddenly, I've started building a business plan based on one question. one question
And you're
someone
thinking
asked me,
differently about it. That's the big thing.
absolutely. I started not focusing on my client, but focusing more on me and my business and how I can duplicate my own success, not just my client's success. So what then happened is, I went in and said, okay, well, it's not going to happen unless I do it. So no one's going to buy a master franchise unless you create the value first. So I went to the US, literally packed my device in the bag, and I flew there with a questionnaire. I drew up a questionnaire. Things like, how did you experience it from 1 to 10, the intensity of the work? How much did you love it? What did you pay for it, etc. So I was literally training my Uber drivers, my people I lived with in the air. Honestly, the people I lived with in the Airbnb,
Oh, that's awesome.
I was training.
I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, so that was 2015. I was hoping someone will bite, right? So someone will, and people used to, I mean, even the Uber drivers, they used to sit afterwards and be like, and you'd probably ask, how did I convince those people to try it? It's not hard when people see you believe in what you're doing to give them a free demonstration, or at least show them your passion that you have for your product. You'd be surprised at how people are willing to listen and to look and to give you feedback. So that was all I was interested in. But I was also hoping that someone gives me maybe a recommendation or referral for someone that's looking to get into the fitness business or has a fitness business and wants to add my concept to it. That didn't happen. Okay, so as you can imagine, I was disappointed. A year passes, 2016, end of the year, one of my mates there asked me, Bert, are you still looking to come here? Maybe we can do it together. And essentially what I said is, you know what, if I'm going to do this, it's going to be grassroots. Okay, no one else is going to do it. I said, okay, what do we need, practically speaking? We need a device, we need a studio, and we need cash flow. Okay, so, I broke all these obstacles and all these concerns I had about how do we do business in the US, how I'm going to do it with my visa. And all of those are the first things that people try and solve. Those are
And
the
not
first
only
problems.
that, I mean, you have to fund that whole business in rand. So rand versus dollar is not really in our favor at this point in time. So, I mean, that's also another tough challenge. I mean, now if something fails that side and it requires more cash, you have to throw more rands at dollars.
Sure. But, to worry about that, though, would have never gotten to me.
Exactly.
What I figured out is that currently I'm already buying this equipment in rands. So I might as well buy it and send it there. First problem solved. Okay. Yeah. Second problem is, how do I get cash flow in dollars, as you've mentioned, because the dollar is expensive, but with a strategic local partner, and that's what I was looking at. Because I knew exactly what I need, it was much more likely for me to find it, but most people look at the problem as its entirety, and they feel they can't move unless they have the entire problem solved. I focused on the things I could solve, and I moved with what I had. So literally when I went, 2017, we registered the business. February, we opened our doors in November, and the rest is history. So the rest is history. I mean, we got a $5 million evaluation on that business in less than 2 years since I opened it. And I must be honest with you, it took me a single trip to the US to try and see what is the response, what's the experience that people have when they train, and will they be prepared to buy? Because if I put my framework and my glasses that I use in South Africa, that same glasses on in the US, if they surely respond the same way that the South Africans responded to the experience, then it's a business that will work there. And, the other things I could figure out along the way, and it ended up being exactly that.
Okay. All right. So Bertus, then, and this is more a personal type of question, and I know all of us as business owners, somewhere along the line, we have those private thoughts of failure. Just that. So, for example, let's take it into my world quickly. So, I'm speaking to Bertus Albertse today, but I could be thinking, but who's going to listen to this? Who's going to listen to little old me speaking to Bertus Albertse? What's the point of creating a business podcast? I mean, I could quite comfortably just be a financial advisor and just go along with that. I've been successful with that. But now expanding into this whole business region, who's going to listen to me? I don't know. So how do you combat, and I'm sure it's still there, even going global now, but more in the beginning phases, how did you combat that, as I said, those private thoughts of failure?
Yeah, self-doubt is good. It's very, very good. It's how we improve ourselves. So I think, first of all, I don't know, I think there's something in our culture and something the way I think we're brought up where you feel that unless you're certain about something, then it won't work. Unless you're certain about something, you shouldn't do it. Apologies. I think as an entrepreneur, what happens, ultimately you realize that's a false. That's false, completely false. And in actual fact, the doubt grows. There's not a day that doesn't go by where I say, shit, Bert, aren't you a fraud? Aren't you you maybe not as, why are you here? What makes you that special? And it
But that's
unleash you think
interesting
that.
because I think a lot of people think as soon as you get more successful and more money, that self-doubt kind of goes away. So you're saying it expands with you.
It grows. No, it grows bigger. The bigger, it absolutely does grow bigger because you're taking more risks. More people believe in you. You need to deliver the results ultimately. So, I'm sure my good friend Dwayne Vermeulen, I can assure you that he has more pressure playing in the World Cup final than he did when he was playing, at school. In the same way.
Or whatever, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And the same thing goes for businesses. It's not like suddenly your stress becomes less. What happens is your appetite for stress increases. Your belief in overcoming problems because you've had problems and you've proven to yourself that you're capable of solving those problems as you go. Suddenly you realize, oh, okay, now I understand. This is normal. No one has the answers. No one does. So it might look like you have the answers sometimes, and that's okay. But you need to know that it's about taking, moving forward, constantly moving. Standing still, you're going to get driven over. Okay, there's, stagnation is death. It's a walking dead in business. So you have to keep moving. Even in times like the pandemic now, you've got so much uncertainty about the future. But the one thing we're sure of is the things we're in control over, which is every day we can do a little bit more in terms of developing our business strategically. We've developed a virtual personal training offering, which our members love. And, suddenly it's opened a whole new world for us where we can do personal training online, bring those people back into our locations when we open again. And it's given us a competitive edge. And that came out, it was necessitated by the fact that we had this problem where we couldn't trade, so how do you solve it? Most people would say, well, listen, I got to wait until level 1 because that's when gyms can open. Yes. Well, what are you? Never forget what you are. All we are is a personal training service. And sure, we use, advanced technology to train people. But ultimately, most of our members tell us how fantastic our trainers are, how great they feel from engaging with our trainers. And when you focus on those core values, then you start realizing, well, can't I offer that online? I mean, you've got platforms like Zoom, which you can do a screen share. You can easily train someone, even though they're not with you. That technology is available. It costs you nothing, and you already have the trainer on your payroll, for example. But ultimately, I had to remind myself that what business are we really in? We're not in the business of EMS training. We're in the business of personal training about people, making them feel great, creating solutions for them, saving time, and that can be done in many different ways. So a lot of people get stuck in the business and believe that their success comes from doing this one thing. And usually most people would say there's probably a handful of things they do that makes them successful. You got to reevaluate those things all the time and really
it's
ask
adapt
yourself,
or die scenario, I think, especially in these times. It's exactly what it is. I mean, if you can't adapt, it's going to die.
It absolutely is madness.
Yeah. Okay, so Bertus, the reason why I love exploring the journeys of various entrepreneurs is I fall in love with the process, the journey they had to the top, if I can put it like that. But let's not ignore all the things that we all, I call it hate or dislike to do in the process. So if you have to capture the last 7 years, I'll take it back to myself. So obviously, I'm there where I've got my own franchise now. I'm building this business on the side as well. But that's not where I started. I started literally, I'd climb in my car 1 a.m. on a Monday morning to drive to KZN, and I live in Gauteng, to drive to KZN, to the Northern Cape. And I would sell life insurance policies, funeral policies in rural areas. That's how I started as a youngster, 18, 19 years old, fresh out of school. And that's now thinking back, it was the best thing to ever happen to me. But obviously, doing that, it's a lot of time on the road. You dislike those certain portions of the journey, but it's also as valuable. Would you say there's anything that you can pinpoint that you had to grind through in order for you to sit in that chair and speak to me today?
Yeah, a lot. I want to do honor to your podcast and kind of summarize it in a very sexy way, but there's really it is absolutely the opposite of it. The mornings where you're going to wake up at 4:30 on a Saturday morning to train your client at 5, knowing that you're alone there. There's 15 members back to back, coming in where you 5-6 hours, not going to drink water, not going to eat, and you're exhausted. You might have a hangover, but you got to do it. So I don't recommend the hangover part, but many times like that. Many times anxiety. I used to deal with a lot of anxiety. Like I think a lot of people do, more than we know. And for me, who I believe I'm quite strong, strong-minded. Um, it was a real awakening for me to realize that your own mind could be your weakest enemy, because it's always been my friend. It's always been, I've always had a really strong outlook and a strong positive outlook.
I agree.
But there's I'm a father of three. When I was 24, I already had three kids. So obviously that's quite a problem to solve in the sense of providing security, providing food on the table. So,
Yes.
hustling to make sure that they eat, and that was my biggest fear. I would never forget, I moved to Somerset Sereno when I dropped out of university in my third year, which is just in Somerset West. I went to Marty's and Stellenbosch, and it was 3,000 rent. And, I was like, how am I going to afford 3,000 rent? And that is now 10 years ago or so. It's not a long time, or at least doesn't feel like it. And the other things I was worried about, I emptied my savings to buy furniture, and I had new respect for my parents' home that, I realized, wow, 14,000 Rand doesn't buy you much. I still remember clearly I had 14,000. I think I bought a bunker bed, which I was like, okay, a bunker, at least there's like two beds. So that's two for the price of one. And I bought a double bed and a fridge, and the money was gone, So the rude awakening at the age of 22, and every day was just survival. It's survival. And I must be honest, I was self-employed. I used to think I'm a business owner, but I was self-employed for the vast majority of my life, up until 2 years ago. And then that's 3 years into my business as a franchisor. Then only I felt like now I'm a business owner where I'm developing a leadership team. It's not about me. I used to think I need to solve, and I still, to be honest with you, I used to think I need to be the smartest person in the room. I used to think I have to solve all the problems because I came from, unless I did it, no one will do it. And it's not always the right mentality, because ultimately you rely on other people in your journey to support you, to be there when you can't be there, to take, and all of those things became more important to me. I started realizing, let me invest more into the people I'm working with and for than, into myself. And that really started changing my business rapidly. And immediately you were speaking about working on top of the business. Working on top of the business is about self-awareness more than about anything else,
Sure.
and facing, the devil in the eyes. I have no financial training. I have no business training. So immediately I had to realize, okay, well, I didn't even know how to build a business plan. So, some of my franchisees, I've been fortunate where there was people who crossed my road who said, Bert, you've got a great concept. I can see your passion. I love your brand. I love what you're doing. But here are things that you should be doing and instead of rejecting it and going like, you know what, we're a gym, we're, or we're a personal training service. I'm not an accounting firm. Okay. So instead of dismissing it, what I did is saying, okay, well, interesting. How would that look? And then, consult and get those mentors, get those coaches to work with you. And eventually you do those things yourself. People who do business with me now would never believe that I was not capable of drawing up a budget or cash flow forecast myself, because
But
I
I
was
think
able.
yeah, sorry. I think that's a big thing to be honest with yourself, to say that you can't control everything. You can't do everything yourself. I'm exactly the same. It took me, I would say 2 years back, I started to realize that I can't run everything. I can't do anything myself. You need to kind of put that over to somebody else at a certain stage. And that's important. I think if you can just do a couple of things very well, you'll end up way further than somebody that tries to manage everything and tries to
So
be
you
the
need to
best and
do
the
the
smartest
important things
person.
well.
Exactly.
You see, it comes back to knowing what business you're in. A lot of people
Absolutely.
over-engineer their business. They want to have the best product, the best service, but they forget that the acquisition is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Sales. And sales, unlike in the old days, you could sell door to door with a script in your hands. That's not happening anymore. Now you have to take extreme ownership. People want to see the owner in the sale. They want to understand the story. They want to
Exactly.
know they're buying into something more than just the product or just the service. And coming back to why franchising works so well is that in the service, you see the heart of the owner. In the culture of the team, you see the heart of the owner. And that's something that you cannot replicate. There's no amount of money that can buy that. But it's important for you to focus on the things that matter most to your business. We do tend to be very unproductive as business owners because you end up worrying about things that is not in your field of expertise. Okay, those things tend to worry you more than others.
And it's outside of
Whereas
your control.
absolutely, instead of focusing on the things that is in your control. And one of the things always in your control is getting new people to believe in your product, getting new people to love what you do, and to buy from you. That's in your control. The problem on delivering the product to them, that's a good problem to have. If you've got
Yes.
sales coming in, but you don't have cash flow for the cost of sale, to give the product, for example, to cover your expenses, you know what? That's a good problem, because that problem can be solved with sales. Sales is the majority. I always say this. Sales is the majority shareholder of your business, not you. If you understand that, then you start taking your ego out of it. You're like, okay, I'm willing to put myself on the line. I'm willing to be in the front line, because
And then
I'm
you
not
can
this.
build.
Then you can build. Absolutely.
And talking about the franchise opportunities that you guys give, so, well, let's ask one or two questions. So first of all, why franchise versus building something yourself? Let's start there, basically. And then also, if we look at some stats, I mean, 9 out of 10 businesses fail in the first 2 years. It's a stat everybody knows. So if I can kind of get personal once again, so how does the stats look at Body 20? Let's talk South Africa, the South African business. How does the stats look there? And once again, why franchise, not trying just do something yourself?
Yeah. So, okay, first of all, I think a lot of people have a misperception about franchising. Our franchisees owns their businesses 100%. So they are owners of their business. They have a license agreement with us to license your intellectual property, both tangible and intangible intellectual property, operational intellectual property, leverage the brand, the strength of our marketing as a whole versus the sum of its parts. And ultimately, that's the benefit to the franchisee. But the question of franchising or not franchising comes down to a finance model. So, for example, for you to raise capital either through equity financing or traditional financing from a bank, to grow your brand is quite risky. Okay, because ultimately you need to manage all of those risks. You need to manage all of those locations. So for us, it was natural, knowing that we're in a service business. It's hard to replicate the service component of our business. Much easier to replicate retail stores, right? Because you've got the same products being sold. You've got the same, in our case, the service could differ from one location to the other, depending on the culture and the heart of the owner and the trainers.
So do you allow the owner to have some flexibility in the sense that where they want to take the business, not changing anything fundamentally about it, but that's the common perception about a franchise is it's kind of, let's call it the Bertus Albertse way of doing things, and I can't do anything as the business owner. Is that how does it work at Body 20 relating to that?
From a contractual obligation, to be honest, there's always this bit of a power imbalance between franchisor and franchisee, because ultimately you're trying to protect the brand. You also want to make sure that everyone benefits from the best practices, and the mistakes we've already made. And sometimes you get new owners with great ideas, and that's all valid, but they've not necessarily tested those assumptions in the market, so you want to make sure you've got a tried and tested formula for success. So we are strict on certain things, absolutely, like the price of our product, what type of package is suitable for what type of person, and things like that is important, sure, but there are things that you cannot that you can't enforce, okay? And that is a culture or a feeling about, and a culture is ultimately a feeling, right? It's like, how do you feel about your business? How do you feel about your work? Are you passionate? Are you excited to go to work? And you can cultivate that only if you've got the right leadership culture. Okay, that's the only way to do that. So in terms of franchisees having flexibility, absolutely. Our franchisees get to manage their own social media pages. Yes, we provide them with content. Yes, we provide them with guidelines. Yes, there's social media guidelines. But ultimately, they have a sense of freedom where they engage themselves with their members. It's still their heart in their business, but they're in a safe framework where they know, listen, as long as I do this, then there's a predictable success pattern, as long as I follow this process. Whereas that variable goes up exponentially when you put an untested and an untried assumption into the mix.
Absolutely. And it's also about protecting the brand as well.
No, it absolutely is. But again, protecting the brand is about protecting your franchisee and protecting the member in the location.
Business,
and that's what it's about when we speak about protecting the brand. It's not this bigger thing than the franchisees. No, the brand is the collective network. That is the brand. But the thing is this, is everyone does things differently. Then then it's going to be different value proposition in different areas. And that's why we need to make sure that we learn from each other and we put all of that information together to improve and to have a competitive edge, because we have more people on the ground, more people learning than anyone else. It's not about knowing the answer. It's about having a culture of learning, which we call validated learning. Now, what does validated learning mean? Nothing we do but with a thumbs up. What we establish early on is what is the assumptions we make. Okay. And that's usually a bit of a leap of faith. upfront, right? So the assumption, for example, is when we developed the virtual personal training program, we said, okay, we assume that there's enough value for people to pay for online personal training. That's a big assumption, right? Because we're not selling it currently. We don't know
Yes.
what people will value it. Okay. But instead of getting stuck there and say, oh, we're not sure, we said, okay, so we've identified that the value proposition is the assumption and how much value there is the assumption. There's no doubt that there is value. The question is just how much value is there? So then we said, okay, well, the only way to test that is to test it on the smallest viable market. Okay. So we already had the smallest viable market within our existing members that's already stuck at the house. They don't have many other options. What a great time to test this service, okay, and to get a quick feedback loop in order to develop our assumptions and firm them up, okay? And we've been able to do that kind of with a scientific approach. What I mean by a scientific approach is that, a lot of times as owners, we make snap judgments, and it's easy because our opinion matters and we want to move quickly, right? So typically, you don't want to test those assumptions. You assume your assumptions are correct because you've had success before. So ultimately, you believe in your judgment to be good for your business. Sure. Whereas we've changed our mindset with that quite a bit over the years from saying, no, there's got to be a process that you can replicate, first of all. And a process that can give you sustainable results. And that process typically includes identifying your assumptions early on and then testing those assumptions. Now, the way we test them is by actually doing them, about actually launching the product, launching the service without having all the answers.
Okay, so basically it's down to a proven concept that I think the probability of success might be higher. Yes, you can't sit back and not work on your business. Obviously, you need to be there. And as you said, it's owner operated. Your heart and soul has to be in it. But I think there's some portion that we can allocate to some sort of a comfortability with the big brand behind you as a franchisee.
And but just relating, record, right? Exactly. Your track record is important, especially with regards to franchising. And ultimately, it's an educational system. So the more training we provide, the more effective our training and our educational process, the better the franchisee will perform, right? Because ultimately they need sales training, marketing training, training on actually how to give the best possible customer experience. So, and those are things that small business owners don't have the luxury of, okay? They're working inside of the business. How do they develop training programs and new strategies when they're busy, day in, day out, from the morning to the night, and just serving their client? Absolutely. And that's what allows, in a franchise system, it gives the franchise all the opportunity to work on developing those strategies and also use the collective power of the entire network to improve. And also to market more aggressively than anyone else can, because you've got the collective national marketing fund versus people trying to build a brand out of a smaller pool of locations.
Okay. And then in Bertus as well, usually there's also, in my opinion, a common misperception whereby people always say you need money to make money. And my opinion on that is that you're already on stage 3 of your business. If you think you need more money, then you should start at stage 1 and work with what you have and build it organically. So in terms of that, if I look, I know that you guys offer different packages for franchisees. I mean, that's typically enough. I have to look at the highest one. It's not in my reach right now, but I believe you guys offer, call it a ladder approach to it, where you can start at the bottom and build yourself up to the biggest studios. And I don't know if you agree with me on my point about the whole money thing, but just explain that whole scenario, what you guys offer.
Yeah, thanks, Minus. So, I mean, first of all, different strategy applies to different types of owners. Okay. And we recognize that early on. You get personal trainers that has a clientele already that's quite capable of operating a fitness business successfully, but they don't have the capital requirements. And that's why we developed an express location for someone to say, you can be an owner. Like myself, I was a great trainer and I could give the experience, but I didn't have the necessary capital. So, we want to empower people like that. And that's how we developed our express model, which the majority of our locations grow from express to a standard type, and from a standard type to a flagship type. And I mean, a flagship type can cost you upwards of 1.2 to 1.4 million rand, right? So, but ultimately, what is a flagship? A flagship is a studio that has more capacity for members. It's got more devices. It's got more trainers, and you can grow into that. So as you've said, a grassroots approach, and it allows us to identify the right operator for the business instead of needing to find the right investor or the right finance partner. That's not where the value lies. Banks have a lot of money. Okay, there's no value in money. The only value in money is how you spend it, right? And the operators ultimately is where the value lies. It's their heart, it's their sweat, it's their sweat equity essentially that makes the business successful.
Absolutely.
And that's how we started developing a system where you can start with an express location and work your way up. As you reach certain membership milestones, then you grow into your location and grow to a standard type, into a flagship type, which has, by the way, happened more often than not in our network. And it's really an empowerment. Yes, absolutely. It mitigates capital risks up front in terms of how much money you tie in before you start going. And it gives you an opportunity to start generating revenue before you invest too much into a business where you don't have that feedback. You're not necessarily, your cash flow is unpredictable and things like that. So even your membership or even your staffing complement, you step up as you grow. No one's going to employ 10 people just to start a business. That's a failing strategy, okay? Unless you have maybe done it before or you've got enough cash flow reserves to do that.
But typically the building block approach would be the best approach to basically take.
I would say for any business, everyone brings me a business plan and they want to go balls to the wall off the bat. I would say you test your product first with the approach of saying, what is the assumptions? Let's test those out.
And then you as a franchisor, what do you guys do for your franchisees in the sense that, for example, let me give you an example. So in terms of location, I know you're not in the restaurant business, but I mean, you guys have studios all over South Africa, as we mentioned. How important is location? And for me, not knowing how to build a fitness empire, I don't know if the mall closest to me would be ideal. Is there some sort of a support there? Because I know the founder of Rocco Mamas, Brian Aldridge, he drove to the first 2 locations 50 times before he opened a Rocco Mamas. And now within his franchise model, they still help the people get the right location and provide insights in it. So what do you guys do? Not only on location, but as a whole, what do you guys offer in return?
Well, thanks for asking. I mean, we do the full project management from identifying the location. If there's already a location that the franchisee might be interested in, we do the site visits, we review it, we do an analysis on the location and on the area. We do the project management support. So we already understand how the project looks from a pre-operational perspective until the point when you open and even after that. So on the one side, from project management support, we provide the entire template for the entire project and we support in terms of even the deal making on the venue and negotiating the lease.
Okay. And then would you say, Bertus, I think in closing, that this time we're currently in the COVID-19 pandemic and let's call it in recession times, bad times. Would you say it's not necessarily body to anybody in general? Would you say it's a good time to start a business?
I think it's a good time. It's always a good time. And especially if there's a lot of problems going around, they do tend to present a lot of opportunities. And that being said, I mean, I've got a lot of other business interests and some of my businesses are doing better than ever at the moment. And including Body 20, we've been able to be incredibly robust during this time because we're in the subscription revenue business. So we've been able to generate revenue even though our doors were closed because we've got contracts. But the question is not if it's the right time. It would depend on what you're doing. It would depend on your business model. And it depends on if you're considering all the changes that we're anticipating in this new world. And, I hate it when people say this new normal. To be honest with you, I think that things will look different. And as long as you're building a business with that in mind, then yes, there's never a better time than now. Never. It never gets easier either. And it's never going to get clearer. I can promise you that. By the time you have clarity, what you probably understand is already wrong. And someone has learned the
it already
way
changed.
Of doing it.
The game changed. So you have to adapt once again.
Changed. So yes, the answer is absolutely now.
Before I want you to leave an inspirational message, especially in this difficult time to business owners as a whole, how do you usually, forgetting about COVID now and everything, how do you usually invest your money? Is it at this point in time where you invest it back into the business? Do you diversify in anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I've never had the luxury of investing money elsewhere other than my business. So, I'm all in guy in terms of, putting everything into the growth of the brand. But, there are, I know that there's other places to invest money as well, but, I invest where I can spend my time and where I've got a certain level of control out of the outcome. I prefer that, and I'm sure there's better investment returns. I definitely not a person to invest into things like RAs. Just because it's such a lifetime investment that I have little control over that and it's hard to access. In anything you do, I think you've got to evaluate the liquidity aspect of your investment. You've got to look at
and the end goal,
returns.
once again, just like a business. Why are you doing it? Is it for a specific reason? That's a valid point there as well. But yes, I think the best thing that you can do and the best investment you'll ever make is in yourself. And it sounds cliche, but that's That's definitely true. I've sold things where some of my friends in the industry will say, but how can you sell this thing? It's minus 40%. And I said to them, yes, I know it's minus 40%, but what I'm doing with that capital, I'm investing it in the business to generate returns here, which is growing at a much better rate than anything else in the market. So I agree with you in that. But yeah, I just wanted to know where you positioned in terms of.
Yeah, okay. So I've got some forex investments. There's some good wealth funds that trade and has a lot of experience in forex. The liquidity is pretty good there, consistent returns. They do really a fantastic job. I've got some property investments in terms of rental properties. They give you about at best case scenario, do a 6% cash flow a year on those properties compared to the investment. And that's pre-tax, so it's not fantastic. I think that you should be aiming for anything at least between 10 and 15% a year, if not better. I mean, some of these guys, especially in the forex realm, I see they have a historic track record of between 20, 30, even 40% returns, which is insane. But that actually does happen, and I've been fortunate to have invested into some wealth funds that do incredibly well, and that's got great algorithms, understand the market conditions, the volatility, and they take advantage of it. So, I think it's important to learn and make those decisions yourself. I know you as a broker, you need to rely on people like yourself giving good advice, but make sure the broker you're speaking to is a specialist in what they do. You don't want to speak to a broker that generally is an expert on everything, because that really means he's an expert on nothing.
They say jack of all trades, master of none.
Well said, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I think anything you put intention behind it and to work towards something, then it can make sense in one's life at the end of the day. But just thanks for your time. Yes. No.
Bertus, it's the last advice I'll give to someone from an investment perspective. Something I never understood is, what's the definition of an investment? You need to have some fundamentals in place. Otherwise, you won't even know what a good decision looks like. And that's something that really helped me. Books like Poor Dad, Rich Dad, I know it's a cliche, but it's incredibly helpful. The Lean Startup by Eric Rice, that's a fantastic book. I'll recommend it to anyone.
I read that as well.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Those are all valuable books, but I think the key thing that stood out for me is defining success correctly. Success to yourself, first of all. Investment, what's an investment? Something that generates positive cash flow. Otherwise, it's a liability ultimately, right? Even though, typical bookkeeping will tell you your house is an investment, your car is an investment, or it's at least an asset. No, it's not. Unless you're making money from it, it's not. And the question is, how good is the investment is dependent on how much do you get in return, and that's calculated by, a total cash flow per year over the total investment. And the moment you start realizing, so I can now measure the success of my rental property against the success of my forest investment, against the success of my own business. So what typically happens in your own company, you expect it to grow 100% year on year. From a startup, at least for the first 3 to 5 years. If you're not growing really at 100% per year, then you're not really growing fast enough to become a competitor in the space. But the point being is that essentially means the growth of your own time and your own business will always exceed any other investment that you can ever make, but it also comes with a much, much higher risk, most likely. So it's about balancing the risk-reward ratio.
I just wanted to say it's all about balance and also a good and firm understanding once again. So whatever you put in place, to see it through and to know why you put it in place in the beginning. So and back to what you said, I think it's really an approach that you should take where you invest intentionally and to understand why you're doing certain things. That's what I think that. Yes. And I think from my experience, at least for whatever that's worth, is that I don't think people has an understanding about that. I think they meet somebody like me and they just take whatever we say as just do it type of thing. Whereas I think if you can build a strategy and formulate something, it could work in different sectors. So in other words, diversifying, as you said, you've got Forex, but you've also got wealth fund. You've also got property going. You've also got Body 20 and you're involved in different businesses as well. At the end of the day, that's splitting your risk. That's diversifying. So if the one thing goes down, there's always something to fall back on. But just in close,
fantastic advice.
I'm leaving some listeners and business owners, especially in this troubled time. Would you mind leaving them with a final thought from your side?
Yeah, I wish I could dig deep and give you guys a fantastic inspirational message. But I think, guys, everything goes in ups and downs. This would not be the first time this country is in a recession. It's definitely not going to be the last time. In actual fact, go look at history to put your mind at ease, is that there's usually the biggest opportunity arises through massive disruption like this. So, when you focus on that, then suddenly you see this as an advantage instead of a disadvantage. And that might just be one way of getting a distinction in your life where you start saying, okay, well, if I do that, then suddenly you're asking a better question and a better question. So start with the smallest things. Be grateful for the little things that you have. I don't know, they might be impounding your car and you'd be like, Bert, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a car. Well, maybe, you have your health. Maybe if your health, maybe that's a distinction that you can use to move you forward to the next level where you go, okay, well, I've got my house. So that means I can work hard. So suddenly you feel motivated to work hard because you feel you have something that no one else has. And ultimately, that's why I sit here today, guys, is I am an optimist and I'm grateful for the things I've had. And that's why I believe I've been given more responsibility, with the things that I do have to get more, is because ultimately I understand that you need to appreciate the small things in order to be trusted with the big. So, I think we're all on our knees. We're all humbled. So now let's use that humility and build a much more powerful and a much more durable business and a livelihood for all of us in the future. Like Ramaphosa says, it's a disruption. It's a great time to reform our economy. And this has got nothing to do with race or, inequality. It's got to do with the way we think. It's got to do with the way we think. We've got to think differently. We're going to think inclusively, but we also got to be creative, be strategic, be aggressive in our approach. And
I think it goes back to that quote that says, change the way you see things and change the way you look at things and the things you look at will change.
Very well said. And maybe I can leave you with one of my quotes that I really like, is that the rabbit will always outrun the fox, because while the fox runs for its lunch, the rabbit runs for its life. Now, we all are rabbits at the moment running for our lives. So make no doubt that we're going to be running faster than we've ever ran before, and no one will catch us. And I think we can at least rest easy in knowing that.